Are you always worrying about sleep or what's going to happen without it? Specifically, if you have been struggling with insomnia, fear or sleep anxiety can feel very prevalent. That could be anything related to what's going to happen if you don't sleep or what's going to happen if this issue persists. This fear can also be kind of like seeping into your relationships, your job, your mental health, what will actually happen to your well-being over the course of time. And let me just start by saying that all of this is completely normal, and you may not believe it, but it's actually your brain trying to keep you safe. I'm going to be jumping into it in a little bit more detail in today's video. But before we get into it, my name is Fiona, and if we don't know each other yet, I was once a chronic insomniac. And honestly, insomnia took so much away from me. It took me a really long time to get the help that I really needed, which is why I'm creating all of these videos that are packed with educational content so that you can feel empowered to take insomnia recovery into your own hands. So diving in, I'm going to break down what exactly is happening when you're experiencing sleep anxiety. And to start off, I want to really kind of like dive into the educational component of why you're feeling a certain way, because I truly believe that knowledge is power. And if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, I just want to quickly say that I truly believe that there are patterns to our human conditioning. Things don't happen by mistake. We are either conditioned through our previous experiences or we're conditioned through external, circumstances, external knowledge that in some way affects us. And whatever we have attributed to, our conditioning is going to make us feel a specific way. And the more we understand why certain, thoughts are coming up, why these thoughts are causing certain emotions, why we have fear towards certain things, the more we can also start breaking these cycles in order for us to find peace within our, within our lives and within our experiences. When it comes down to insomnia and what we're going to be speaking about today, all around sleep, anxiety, or fear around sleep, this also means that the more we understand why we're feeling a specific way towards sleep or the lack thereof, the more we're going to start understanding why we're feeling certain emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and also how we can maybe break the cycle and make recovery just a little bit easier. This is where I do want to start by saying that the brain has one primary focus, and that is one of survival. That basically means that everything we are doing in life is truly attributed to maximizing this one thing. And that basically means that all of our thoughts, choices, and actions are truly, again, geared towards maximizing our survival, either in the present moment or in a future kind of optimal situation. And this is where you may be asking yourself, well, what does fear exactly have to do with this, right? Why am I feeling fearful around sleep, and what does that have to do with my survival? And that's because insomnia is the misidentified threat of wakefulness. We have, along the way, when we have struggled with sleep, have internalized that the fact that we are not sleeping is in some way harmful for our survival. And because we have attributed sleep as this massive thing, we believe that over the course of time, if we do not sleep, something bad is going to happen. That could mean, there's associations with sleep in our health, our relationships, our job, etc., etc. And even though this fear is something that is presented itself in kind of like a future situation, this truly is experiencing of thoughts, emotions, and unwanted situations in the present moment. Meaning your fear has identified, or your anxiety has identified something that is a threat. And even though it is not unraveling in present time, the emotions and thoughts around that specific thing feel very much real in that moment, which is why you're probably watching this video. How can I actually get rid of fear? And before we also understand how we get rid of fear, we also need to understand where fear comes from, why you're feeling a specific way. So this is really, really important for you to grasp. It's the fact that fear has basically been ingrained in your brain as something that needs to be avoided in order to keep you safe. And fear is so unbelievably uncomfortable because it is the unraveling of those future emotions in the present moment that, of course, fear feels very heavy, uncomfortable, unwanted. And our natural instinct is truly to want to avoid these feelings, distract ourselves from these feelings. We're trying to push them away. We're trying to have a dialogue with our mind. And in a way, we're trying our best to fix in general to fix this fear? How do I get rid of the fear around sleep? When in reality, all we need to do when it comes to this fear is actually listen. And I'll be breaking this down, and I know that's like, okay, what do you actually mean by listening to my fear? And the reason why our brain needs us to listen is because it is trying to warn us of something, right? The more we're trying to avoid these feelings, these thoughts, these emotions, we're trying to run away from these very primary kind of reactions to certain situations that our brain and body actually have. They have nothing to do with logic. So we can even kind of logically understand that wakefulness may not be a threat, or that maybe even nothing will happen if we don't sleep, or if we sleep a little bit less. But our brain doesn't know that, right? And the more we're actually trying to avoid these thoughts and emotions associated with that threat that it has identified, realistically, the louder they're going to get. And they're going to get louder and louder because we're not listening. And because our primary focus is survival, again, our brain is going to try and do everything possible in order for you to actually listen to the signals that it's telling you. So this is where you may be asking me like, well, how do we know that the threat isn't real, right? Like, how do we know that the threat of wakefulness isn't actually real? Why is it just perceived as opposed to potentially any other threat? And I also recognize that the fear and the emotions that you're having around the lack of sleep feel very real in that present moment. And that's because we can actually experience wakefulness without anything happen. For example, imagine if you're being chased. You're in like the plains of Africa on a safari, and you lose your group and you're for some reason out in the bush all by yourself, and you meet a lion and it's going to chase you. Those feelings, those thoughts, those emotions, all of that adrenaline is going to feel very, very real in that present moment, because you're going to have to run away from the lion in order to maximize your chances of survival. The difference between that and sleep is that you can't just kind of like hang around and figure out whether or not the lion is or isn't going to eat you. The threat is very real, right? However, wakefulness is a completely different situation, because you can actually experience wakefulness and know that nothing's going to happen. We have attributed the lack of sleep to be connected to so many other external factors. However, unless you're a psychic, which I am pretty sure you are not, you can't actually predict the future. And everything that your brain is trying to warn you of, whether or not your sleep is going to affect your job, your relationships, your well-being, is all just speculation, right? The threat isn't actually real. It's the threat that we have associated with the idea of not sleeping. And that's not actually your fault. We also live in a society where the emphasis around health, and specifically 8 hours of sleep, is very prevalent. I've spoken to clients of mine who have actually been to doctors asking them for help with their insomnia, and the doctor has simply specified how bad it is for them not to sleep. And this, of course, just reinforces the fear, because the more we're being kind of bombarded by this external stimulus that the lack of sleep is in some way harmful for our survival, the more we're ingraining in our brains that wakefulness is something that needs to be avoided. And of course, because wakefulness feels like something that needs to be avoided, yet it can't actually be controlled, there's all of this fear around what's going to happen if that is not something that we can control, right? That's when we start associating sleep with so many other external factors, even though they're actually completely unrelated to sleep itself. And they're unrelated because even if you have been struggling with sleep, I am pretty sure that you haven't had all bad days. Like, yes, lack of sleep can make you feel tired. It can make you feel maybe a little bit more emotional. Maybe you don't feel like you're your best. But realistically, it doesn't take away from every single experience. You're probably still having really nice moments with your family, with your loved ones. You're probably still showing up at work as best as you can. And those are the things that we can actually control. We can't control sleep. We can't control the thoughts that are coming up, but all we always have the ability to control is how we react to these situations. So knowing that the threat of this fear isn't actually real, you're probably also asking yourself, okay, well, how do I actually break the cycle? And to this, I also want to just quickly explain to you the cycle of anxiety and why we are continuously feeling it in just a little bit more detail before we dive into how to actually break the cycle in more kind of like concrete examples. And this is where I do want to just quickly go over like the cycle of avoidance of this fear. And this is where you can kind of look into your step number 1. So you have a reaction to a specific situation. In this case, it is the reaction of wakefulness. You experience the lack of sleep and you in some way react as that is something that is going to be, I guess, harmful for your survival, when in fact you can also just feel wakefulness and be aware of it without actually reacting to it in some kind of negative way that is going to impact / like affect the way that you view that lack of sleep. Because you react in a specific way, the alarm gets louder. This is where you start worrying around sleep. You feel thoughts, more intense emotions that you are starting to pay attention to. And then you actually reinforce the fear by avoiding or escaping that kind of thought and emotion. Avoiding and escaping these thoughts can look like pushing away the thought. It can also look like a dialogue in your mind. You're trying to disprove or prove what it's trying to tell you of, when in reality, the true way out, again, is to listen to what the brain is trying to tell you. This is where we're really trying to focus on allowing the uncomfortable thoughts and emotions to be there without actually having to engage with them. How can we allow them some space, some presence in our mind, and know truly in our hearts that there isn't actually anything that we need to fix or avoid in this kind of situation? Now you may be asking yourself, well, how exactly do I listen to my thoughts or my emotions? And this may come up in multiple different ways. Of course, when we're experiencing insomnia, the fear around not sleeping can be very present both during the day, especially approaching nighttime, and also at night. So when you're experiencing thoughts, I guess, approaching nighttime, this is where I want you to practice just gentle awareness of that thought being there. Sometimes when the thoughts become a little bit too overwhelming and we feel like the thoughts are getting the best of us, meaning that we're starting to have some kind of emotional reaction to that thought and that discomfort, this is where honestly writing things down can be such a powerful tool of genuinely thought dumping all of your thoughts onto paper. And this may sound very, I guess, like esoteric, and it may feel like, okay, well, how is journaling my thoughts have to do with anything? And all we're trying to do is not actually kind of like dump our thoughts onto paper, but it's the practice of bringing gentle awareness to our thoughts and starting to learn and recognize what thoughts we can pay attention to versus which ones we can avoid. And this is where, when we write our thoughts down on paper, we can start to also give them true value. When we write down our thoughts and we start to truly practice the observance of thoughts without truly engaging in them, we can start to see that thoughts are just thoughts. They're just a string of words stuck together. The meaning that we give our thoughts is something completely different. And then in the middle of the night, if you feel like it is very difficult for you to fall asleep, if you feel like you're battling with wakefulness itself and the fears coming up around what exactly is going to happen the next day, this is where you can also, one, try and remove the focus on sleep being the outcome of what you need. You can focus on rest instead. If you prefer to get out of bed, that's also something that's always available to you. You can do something else that you enjoy. This is where like this idea around befriending wakefulness truly comes in. And again, if the thoughts and emotions truly come up again, I tell this to all of my clients and all of them have had huge amounts of success with this. But truly, again, spending 5 minutes just writing down all of your thoughts. This is not where you're going to try and change your thoughts. You're not trying to prove or disprove them. You're just trying to write them down at face value without having to change their meaning, anything. They're just they're coming out of your brain completely unattached and unfiltered. Anyway, I hope this video helped you in some way. I truly believe, again, that knowledge is power. The more you understand the cycle of anxiety, the cycle of fear around sleep, and why it is actually presenting itself, it's going to feel very empowering to know that your brain is actually working in your favor, not against you. I know sometimes when it comes to insomnia, it feels like your body and your brain are self-sabotaging your own joy, when in reality, they're actually trying to keep you safe, even though what it has perceived as a threat isn't actually real. And this is where, again, the number one thing that is in your control in these situations, it is how you react to wakefulness and also the fear that is being presented to you in your brain. Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you like this video and if you have a follow-up question, comment, concern, please go ahead and drop that in the comment section. I always get back to everybody who reaches out to me. And if you did like this video and want to hear a little bit more about insomnia recovery and also the nature of why this is actually happening, then go ahead and just subscribe and like this video, as this truly helps my cause and helps me really get this message out to more and more people. Anyway, see you later.